The best jazz musicians in the world can play a solo unaccompanied and you know exactly what tune they were playing. You can do that too. Let's talk about it. So the secret to playing the changes is to really make strategic choices about what notes you're going to play. Specifically, the notes that are going to make the chords pop out when you're improvising. So let's take a listen to a great jazz blues solo that really plays the changes, and then we'll talk about it. All right, so we start the solo off on an A-flat 7 chord. We're playing an A-flat blues. And we're really just starting off with some pentatonic ideas here, so. But when we get to the D-flat 7, which is the 4 chord, that's where our note choices really start coming out, right? So we go, right? Now, the note that we're targeting here on the D-flat 7th chord at the end of the line is a C flat. Now, a C flat is really the flat 7 of the D flat. Now, this is really important. The notes that we resolve to with the chords are really going to help us start playing the changes, even though we're just playing pentatonic lines here. So, right? Because that flat 7 is what we call a guide tone. A guide tone is the 3rd or the 7th. And those are the notes within the chord that are most often defining the quality of the chord, whether it be major or minor or diminished, so on and so forth. So we really want to be targeting those notes. So we go, and it automatically is helping us play the changes. Now, let's take it a little step further though. When we get back to the A-flat 7-1 chord, let's go up the arpeggio. Right? So we're basically playing the root, we're playing the 3rd, we're playing the 5th. That's basically an A-flat triad. So we're basically spelling out that chord right there. Now we're actually going down an E-flat minor triad there, which totally works, right? Because it's actually in the key of A-flat. So it still sounds good, but we're defining that chord really with that first triad there. Now, we're gonna do this again over top of the D-flat 7, the 4 chord. When we get back to the 4 chord again, we're gonna kind of repeat that same rhythmic and musical line. We call this motivic development, by the way, when you take a musical idea and then you sort of morph it. And it sounds like this. Now, this is magic right here because basically over the D-flat 7, we're going root, 5th, root, flat 7, that's our guide tone, 3rd, that's our guide tone. So basically, we're playing strictly chord tones, all of the chord tones over that D-flat 7 to really spell it out. But we're not just going up and down the arpeggio, right? We're really doing something creative with it. We land on the 9 there, so. Now, we get to the D diminished 7. This is the sharp 4 diminished. And with the line, we go right down the arpeggio. But the line is still going this direction, right? We go up and then we head in this downward direction. That's why it makes such great musical sense. So yes, we're playing chord tones, but we're playing chord tones in such a way that we're connecting them together and we're making the musical line resolve in the direction it's going. Then we have this little ornamental line to get from this D diminished to the A flat again. It sounds like this, right? Again, but what note are we resolving to? We're resolving to this E flat note of the A flat 7. So on the downbeat of that measure, it's this E flat, which is the 5, it's the 5th. So the 5th is a chord tone. It's not a strong chord tone, but the notes that we play after that are really gonna help. So, right? Basically going up the arpeggio there of the A flat 7. Right? So all of that It's just chord tones over the A flat 7. Now, the next thing we do is really, really cool. This is an entirely different way to play the changes without actually focusing so much on chord tones, and that is tension and resolution. So we have this F7, which is the 6th chord. It's the dominant 6th chord that's resolving to our 2 chord, the B flat minor 7, right? But we had this cool line. Then we land on the G note here. Now, G is actually the 9th of F7, right? So it's the 9th. But what we're gonna do next is play a C natural, that's the 5th, and then play a G flat. So it goes, now the G flat is the flat 9 of the F7. So this flat 9 sounds really good over top of a dominant 7th chord that is going to be resolving to some kind of 2 chord or 1 chord, right? Sounds really, really good. So in this line, we're playing the changes even without chord tones by adding that tension note, the flat 9 to the F7. So, right? Sounds so good. Okay, then we have this B flat minor 7th chord. That's the 2 chord we're at now. We're gonna kind of walk up the B flat Dorian scale, but again, also focusing on hitting those important chord tones. Right, so that right there is the flat 7. That's the important guide tone. Right, then we hit the 9th and the root. So we're not just playing a scale, we're playing chord tones and we're playing extensions, but again, being very strategic about what note choices we're playing. Now we have this F sharp lead tone that goes into a G natural when we get to the E flat 7, the 5 chord. Now, this G natural is the 3rd. That's another one of our guide tones. So if we're constantly targeting these thirds, it's gonna sound really good. Right? So that was really just targeting that 3rd at the beginning of the chord and going up the arpeggio. To end it, we just simply end on some pentatonic stuff. It sounds really good. Right? So in general, we always want to be targeting those guide tones, playing the chord tones. If we're focusing more on that, our jazz solos are gonna really sound amazing. Hey, by the way, I always like to mention that the best way to actually practice this kind of stuff is to learn jazz standards and actually compose your own solos over top of this. So the more jazz standards you learn, the easier this gets to understand. So check out my free guide, Learn Jazz Standards the Smart Way, at learnjazzstandardsthesmartway.com. And that gives you a great 5-step process for learning jazz standards by ear so that you can learn more of them and do more stuff just like this. Now, if you're someone who's really struggling in general with playing chord tones and identifying chord tones, then let's strip things back a little bit. I have a video on the screen right now that's going to help you get some of the basics of playing chord tones and connecting them together over top of chord changes. So check out that video on the screen right now. Hope you found this video helpful. If you did, make sure you like it. And of course, subscribe to the channel and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.